Hey, folks, got to clean up my room real quick. Got a little bit of a mess here. Hang on one sec. And I got to turn the light on. I look cool with the blue light. All right. So before I start playing, let me know if I'm getting any sound. David saying left the wife by the pool to learn about modes. Priorities are questionable. Standing by. Right on. Cool. Well, Dave, you gotta have time for yourself too. So, and time for the wifey. Of course, man. I'm married. I understand. Time for both. All right. Cool. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. All right. And then Danny, cool, from Arkansas. Right on. Steve. All right. Cool. Russ. Cool. All over the place. David saying, thought about going to Vegas, stay home and be cooler. Yeah. And stay out of Phoenix too, Dave. It's hot out here. It's 1:15 today. Pretty toasty. All right. Oh, yeah. I got the Troubadour shirt on. That's a club right down there in your neck of the woods, David, relatively, Hollywood, California. Oh, you say you always wanted to go there. Gonna do the Whiskey Rainbow and Troubadour. Absolutely. Yeah, back in the day, real quick, everybody. When I moved out to California when I was 20 to go to music school down in Hollywood, Musicians Institute. And the band I was with back in Maryland, we all moved out to California together. And we played all those great clubs that you're talking about, Dave. The Troubadour, we played there many times. Troubadours where Elton John busted through into America. That was his first American gig, was at the Troubadour on Sunset Boulevard in Santa Monica. And then right up the street, I believe up Doheny off Santa Monica, up to Sunset Boulevard, you got the Whiskey right up there. You got the Rainbow that you're talking about, Dave, and a bunch of, you got, used to be Gazzari's. Gazzari's was the place Van Halen used to play before they made it big. And we played there a lot too. We played the Whiskey. Gazzari's is no longer there, and many other places. But it's a great place, yeah. So anyway, I'm sporting the Troubadour, Doug Weston's famous Troubadour. A lot of bands broke it loose in the Troubadour. I know Linda Ronstadt and the her band, the Stone Ponies, the Eagles, they played there back before any of them got big. I know James Taylor, the Jackson Browne, all those kind of groups played there a lot. It was a lot more folky back in the 70s. When I got there in the mid 80s, early 90s, it was definitely the hair metal, and it was a lot harder rock, and that's what we were doing. So anyway, enough babble about myself. I'm Dave Salentano, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm one of the guitar instructors with Guitar Tricks who's sponsoring our Wednesday night classes. So last week, I started week 1 of a long series covering the modes. And what we're doing, if you missed it last week, I'm spending 2 weeks on each mode. There's 7 modes, 2 weeks on each one. So it's going to be a 14-week period. And I might have a week off in there because I'm going on some vacation. So I might be taking one of those days off up in the future, but not going to miss anything. So we're just going to bump everything a week later. So what we did last week, everybody, we started with mode number 1, the Ionian mode. And we're going to work on that again today. So if you missed last week, don't sweat it. We're going to go over what we did last week in a sec. And then I'm going to add on, there's 2 pages in our curriculum. We're going to cover page 2 today, which we didn't touch on last week. Okay, let me read the comments real quick. Double check so we're not missing anybody. Roland. All right, cool. Roland, yep, from Cool Ventura. Could be nice to borrow some of your breeze over there. And Zach from Venice. Wow, a lot of California dudes and people here. All right, cool. King 50 from Northern Nevada. Right on. Right on, Roland. Thanks. Yeah, I can never tell with YouTube, hit or miss. But as long as I got my loyal students here to let me know when the sound goes out, as soon as I see your comments on that, I will end the session and I'll reboot it and we'll just start same place. No biggie. I got it all figured out. So if we have that issue again, it'll be no problem. Hello, Donna. Hey, I haven't seen your voice, or not your voice, but your name in the chat window here in a little while. Hope you're doing good. All right, cool. David, you're seeing Gino Vanelli. Cool. At the Sabine Theater. Yeah, I think I saw something there. I might have seen Joe Satriani there many years ago. But good stuff. A lot of good clubs in the Los Angeles area. Oh, Russ, like when you throw in some stories. Cool. Yeah, all right. We'll break it up between the academic stuff, the serious stuff, and it's just some tales. But I'll tell you one other thing real quick, everybody. Since we're talking about the Troubadour, I got my Troubadour shirt on here. That club down in Hollywood on Santa Monica Boulevard, it's almost on the corner of Doheny and Santa Monica. We were playing there one night, and when we were done, we went up in our dressing room, and the singer from Rat came in our dressing room, Stephen Piercy. And we had a female singer in our band, so I think he was coming to talk to the band because he was trying to hit on our singer. But she could smell a rat in the kitchen, and she was totally cool with him, and we were all cool with him and stuff. But he's a cool guy. He had his bodyguard with him and everything. He wasn't that tall, and I remember our singer Lisa. She made a comment on it to him about how he was shorter than she thought, and he was like, "Hey." So anyway, that was cool. Yeah, we definitely met a lot of people while playing in Hollywood, different famous people, and a lot of cool just people that aren't famous but really good players. It's a tough place to break in because there's so many good bands and talented musicians. Kind of like being in Nashville. You know, a lot of my friends and other people moved to Nashville because that's also a big recording music industry city right now. Same thing from what I hear. I haven't been there, but from what I hear, there's a lot. You go in every bar and there's like a kick butt band in each bar. So something, it's you got a lot of competition when you go to one of those big cities and try to make it. But anyway, so let's get back on with our work here, everybody. So do a bangs here. Cool. All right, Donna. Cool. Yeah. You know what, Dave? I could learn that one really quick, but I don't know off the top of my head. So maybe some other day. Maybe you and me can work on that in our guitar lessons at some point. But anyway, let's jump on what we got going, everybody. Oh, some other new names here. Kryle Carby. All right, cool. Hey. So open up the text box that's under your YouTube video with me on it. Underneath, you'll see a little URL link, blue one, for the curriculum. There should be 2 pages, and I make a lot of notes on mine, so I got writing to jot down things I want to chat with everybody about and point out. So the first one we did last week was the only one we did last week was the first page. It was the one with the 3 neck diagrams, okay? And the first mode, let's just jump right in here and do this thing. If anyone has questions or comments, put them in the comment chat window, and I'll get to them. I'll keep my eye on that. If I see more popping up, I'll stop and respond to you. Otherwise, I'll just keep the train moving here. So Ionian is the first mode, and I've got all this information written in the text box up here. So if you just kind of read through that, Ionian is the first mode. It's based off the first note in the major scale. And we talked about how many notes are in the major scale. Well, if you play it, the major scale is one we all heard. It's the one that goes do. It's the do, re, mi scale, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then we're going to actually learn that in 2 octaves. The Ionian mode is, in other words, the major scale, aka the major scale. So that's all we worked on last week, is getting that first pattern in the top neck diagram. This one right here down first. This one, the first one I do with everybody when I first start working with new students, because it's an easy one to do. It's 1 finger per fret. No one should have a problem because it's too far to stretch. Like the second pattern has a little more stretching going on. But the first pattern is 1 finger per fret. So it should be pretty easy to play. And the way you want to do this, folks, we're going to make this into a little bit of an exercise for you, because not only just running up and down the scale is important, but knowing where the root notes are. And on your diagram, my printer ink ran out, but the red dots on your diagram, I've got them highlighted green here. These are the root notes. Those are real important to know, because that's the foundation of where the scale starts and the key you're in. So we're going to be in the key of C here, C major or C Ionian. Okay. Now there is a note below it on the diagram, the 7th fret, and our dots have numbers in them. Those numbers relate to which position the note is in the scale. So the root note, I've got an R there, but in other words, that's note number 1. Then the very next note is called the 2nd. The next one's called the 3rd. The next one's the 4th. It's pretty obvious, folks. It's note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then 8 is the root again, or number 1. And that's where you get the term octave from. Oct means 8. So it's the 8th note up is the same as the first one. And from that point, we're just playing the same 7 notes again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then the root again. And then we also want to play any notes besides that go above or below the roots that we can access in this territory. That's why I've got that 7th fret on the 6th string starting back here on the 7th fret. Okay, so what you want to do is learn to play all the notes. There's 3 on every string all the way up, 2 on the 2nd string, and then the 1st string has 3, and we go all the way up to the 10th fret, and then back down. Okay, but here's the deal, folks. If you want to get the sound of the mode in your ears, we need to start and end on the root note. So a good way to practice this is start with the lowest root note, play all the way up to the highest note in the scale, which will be the 10th fret on the 1st string, which is not the root, it's the 2nd degree. And then we're going to go back down, all the way down to the 7th fret on the 6th string, which is not the root, it's the major 7, or the 7th note in the scale. And then we're going to resolve it to the root. And what I want you to do is play all 3 root notes. So we're going to go like this. Okay, you really need to know where the root notes are in your pattern. And then you play the last diagram I've got here, folks, is the C form. It's the E major form bar chord on the 8th fret, which makes it's a C chord. In other words, it's a C chord sound, and that's the chord or the companion chord that goes with the C Ionian, because it's built off the 1st note in the major scale, which means the strong notes are going to be the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, the chord tones of the chord of the key we're in. Okay, so in the C major chord, if you play that bar chord, I'm sure most of us, if we're here to work on modes, I'm sure everybody should know how to play that bar chord. If you don't, you got to know that. You don't want to put the cart before the horse. You don't want to work on scales if you can't even play good rhythm guitar. Okay, we need to have the rhythm down too. So make sure you can play that chord. So what I always do with my students is make sure they start and end on root notes when they play their scales. So they have, because if you don't do that, it doesn't sound like we ended it correctly, and it doesn't really help us to hear what the mode or the scale sounds like. Okay, so you're going to play the scale starting from the lowest root note all the way back down, and on the root note, all 3 root notes, you want to know where they are, and then play the chord. Okay. Now, that one's a very comfortable pattern to play. And if some of you are familiar with the cage patterns or the cage system for learning your scales, that's just one of the 5 patterns of the caged. That's the E form pattern. I don't want to get into the cage system right now because I don't want to mix up too many confusing subjects. All right. The modes are already a little confusing to everybody. That's why we're doing modes for beginners. So I'm not going to go deep into the modes. We're not going to learn all these rad licks. We're just going to learn about the modes and what makes each one what it is and what it sounds like and what the difference is between each mode. Because that's super important. If we can hear the difference between the modes, that's a lot of power there, everybody. Because that way you can choose the sound you're looking for and try the appropriate mode for it. Because some of the modes have a very dark sound. Some have a major happy sound. Some kind of sound in the middle, kind of bluesy, a little bit dark, but then also a little bit happy sounding. So we're going to talk about each one of those as we get to it. But today we're just working on major. And then Jim's commenting, hey, David, all a little bit late. Oh, cool. Yeah, glad to have you, Jim. All right, cool. So we got to get the patterns under our fingers, and we're just going to camp out here. So there's 7 notes. The numbers just refer to the note relative to the root note in order. Okay. Now the little triangle quickly in front of the 2, the 3, the little black dots that have numbers, right? You're going to see a triangle, or in other words, a delta sign in front of the 2, 3, 6, and 7 notes. All that means is the triangle in jazz, they use symbols a lot like that. That means a major chord or a major interval. A lot of times they'll use the triangle when they're talking about like a major 7 chord. They might write C with the triangle after it. That means a major 7. Okay, but we're not doing jazz. We're just going to work with what we're doing here in the modes. Now, the software I use is called Neck Diagrams to create these diagrams. It wouldn't let me change that symbol in the front because really I would just like to have it blank. And then on the minor intervals, because every interval that has a major sound also has a sister or a relative minor sound too. In other words, later on in some of the modes, we might play a root to a flat 2, not a root to a major second, but a root to a minor second. Okay, and those will be notated with a little flat in front of the number. Okay, that'll tell you that it's flat. Like the major third is the root to the 3rd note of the scale. That sounds really happy. But a darker sound would be a minor third. Hear that? We're going to learn about that in our next mode, where you play the root second and then a minor third. But we'll get to that later, everybody. And then look, one more thing. In front of the 4 and 5 in your neck diagrams, there's a little P. That P stands for perfect. Now, the 4 and 5 intervals are perfect intervals, which means there's no minor or major quality to them. You won't call the 4 a major 4th or a minor 4th, or you won't call it a major or minor 5th. There will be a flat 5, like the blues note, or you could call it a sharp 4, like we're going to do in Lydian later on, but we're not going to call them major or minor 4ths or major or minor 5ths. They're perfect intervals, right? Why is that? Don't worry about it for right now. Just that's what it is. Let's just move on from that and just digest, get the finger patterns down. Because if you can't play the pattern, then understanding what the interval means and sounds like doesn't help you that much. So you really got to be able to play the pattern first, and then you'll start to understand how the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle fit together. Okay. And I can always help you more on this in a one-on-one lesson. Or on our Guitar Tricks site, there's a lot of theory lessons. One of our instructors, Christopher Schlegel, great guitar player, and he's well-educated. He knows his stuff. He's got a lot of theory tutorials on Guitar Tricks. So you might even want to search, if you're a Guitar Tricks member, in our search bar in Guitar Tricks, just search music theory, or if you want to work on triads, put in triads, or maybe triad theory, and see what comes up. Okay, there's a lot of lessons on that site. Okay, bouncing down, let's do this. Let's go down to the second one we did last week. It's the same notes, actually, everybody, but they're arranged 3 notes per string. This is another very common way of playing a scale, is arrange it 3 notes per string. Why? Well, a couple things. It's going to make everything a little more even on your picking and in your mind, because every string has 3 notes. You notice with pattern, the first one we did, every string has 3 notes except for the second string. All right, that's the thing with doing the patterns with the cage system. There's always going to be 1 or 2 strings that only have 2 notes, and all the others have 3. But if you lay out your scales and modes, or scales or modes, 3 notes per string, your picking will be the same on no matter which scale you do, because every string has 3 notes. So when you lay them out this way, folks, it still sounds exactly the same, but we've another benefit to it, besides being even a 3 on every string, is that we're going to add 2 extra notes to the very top of it. Once we get up to the top, see where the highest note in the first pattern we did, it ended on the 10th fret, first string. Over here, the 10th fret first string is the first note that we're going to play on the first string, but then we're going to add the 12 and the 13th fret. So we're going to get 2 extra notes higher out of that position. Listen. See, there's your major sound. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And then we're out of strings, so we're going to stop there and go back down. It's always good to, when you're done playing your scale, play all the root notes in it and then the chord. So I'll do that again. Scale. Back down. See how it all pulls it together? And then soloing out of that scale, it's, let me pop this open here real quick. I'm going to just play for really short here, folks, because I want to get onto the new stuff. I'm going to play over it, and you're going to notice the Ionian mode tends to have a really happy sound. What type of chords can you play it over? Well, anything that's in the key of C major, you can play Ionian over it. These chords right here, for instance, I've got them written at the last sentence on the text block right here. The chords you could play over, one possible chord change is C major to G major, A minor to F. It's the chords to Let It Be by the Beatles, but it's also the chords to 100 other songs, all right? As long as you start with C, if I change them up, see, everything always pulls back to the C. That would be another one. I just went C, A minor, F, G. Okay. The backing track I'm going to play over real shortly here is going C major to F major. These chords are also in the key of C major. Okay, don't worry about what chords and how that works. I can always help you with that later, and also the lessons on guitar tricks can help you with that. But we're just trying to get a familiarity with the scale pattern and understand how the notes sound over it, over the chord progression. Okay. So what I'm going to jam on, you're going to notice that it all sounds pretty happy. Now the backing track added a major 7 to each of those chords. So it's going to sound a little more jazzy and slightly funkier, but by adding the 7th, making a major 7s, those 2 extra notes I added, the extra note on the C and the extra note on the F, those notes are still in the scale. In fact, all the notes of these chords, both of them, are in this pattern, this scale we're doing. They might not be exactly in that pattern, like when we were doing the chords here, C, A minor, F, G, right? Or the chords to Let It Be. All the notes in the C chord, if you've figured out what they are, you're going to find it's C, E, G, C, E. Well, it's right here, C, E, G. Okay, we're just playing them in a different spot. The A minor chord is an A, C, and E. Well, here's your A, C, E. Okay, they're all within the pattern. So as long as the chords contain notes that are in the scale you're using, you're good to go. Okay, so let's hear what the track sounds like here for a sec. I'll just let it percolate for a minute, and then we'll start rocking. Here we go. Waiting for the music. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. sound? Okay, and the trick is when you're playing them, try to find the notes that sound good to end on when you're playing. You don't just want to end randomly on a note. You want to make sure that note you end on is in the chord, because not every note in the scale is going to sound great over every chord all the time. The best notes over a particular chord to end on are the chord tones, the root third and fifth. Hey, Benny, what's up? Just doing our lessons here, man. Hope you're doing good. Cool. Good to see your name up there. Cool. All right, so anyway, that wasn't really complicated stuff. I don't want to jam too much over the track, but I want everyone to just get an idea. It's got a very happy, upbeat sound to it, okay? Now, the numbers in the scale, we want to think about these modes in terms of their numbers and the positions, because when we start doing the other modes, some of those numbers are going to become flat or sharp. So we're going to want to see the relationship, compare it to the major scale. And we'll do that once we start going over the next pattern. I'll always come back to this major to compare it to it. And that way you really can hear and see the difference of it. Now, let's think about this. When we're doing the major scale or the Ionian mode, we want to think about the 7 notes. They're just natural numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's no sharps or flats to the numbers. Once we start doing some of the other modes, we might go like 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, for instance. That will be maybe one of the other modes. So that's how we want to kind of view it, is if you're doing that, you would go, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you would go 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6. That's one of our modes. And then a flat 7, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6. See your major 7, you would play a flat. That's one of the next modes. So you're going to already start to hear a few notes sound a little darker. Okay, so thinking about it numerically with the numbers is super important to helping understand the scale. If you want to go beyond just, hey, I know how to play my Ionian pattern. Okay, it needs to go, if you really want to get a grip on it, you need to go beyond that and start thinking about the numbers and the chord tones. And that's also why I gave you the chord shape, because, Dave, what are the chords in the scale? Well, if you don't know what the chord tones are in the scale, just play in your C4 bar chord. You can see that all those notes exist within that first pattern we did. Okay, you could also play the major third back here. Okay, so chew on that a little bit, everybody. Let me throw something else at you, too. Another way to view these is, or a couple ways, all right? There's 2 ways, and this is, I don't want to blow people's minds too much, but one of the ways is the inversion, or the modes are just inversions of the major scale. So in other words, the second mode we're going to work on next, it's going to start on the second note of the major scale, whatever major scale you want, okay? And you're going to make that note, even though it's the second note in the scale, we're going to make that note number 1. And then what was the third note in the scale now becomes the second note in this new mode. Okay, it all shifts. It's an inversion, just like your triads. If I work on triads with a lot of my students, and if you don't know about triads and their inversions, we got lessons on guitar tricks for that. A lot of great lessons. In fact, I did a lesson on triads. It's called Using Triads. And if you're a Guitar Tricks member, just go in their search bar, type in Using Triads. Maybe if you want to put my name too, the lesson will come up. Okay. So like if we took a C major triad, folks, root third, fifth, C, E, G on the top 3 strings, an inversion of that would be the same 3 notes, C, E, G, but moving the lowest note, the C, up to the highest position and making the E and the G, the E the lowest note, G the middle note, and then C the highest note. the shape of that would be up here on the 8th and 9th fret. That's the first inversion. And then the second inversion would be taking the same 3 notes, but making the lowest note the middle note in the first one that we're on here. So now it's going to go, instead of E, G, C, it's going to go G, C, E. And then if you take the lowest note, move it up, and make the middle note in this one the root, you got the first one again, C, E, G. Okay, that's the inversions. That's what we're doing with the major scale for the modes. We're starting on the first note in the major scale. You have C Ionian. And if you really want to hear it, you play the C to the C. If you play the second note in the scale, which is D, move it and play that up to the D using the same notes as C major, but just starting here. See, that doesn't sound like C. It sounds like it fits the second chord in the key of C, which is D minor. Okay. Don't worry about how do you figure that out, Dave? Well, don't worry about that right now. I'm just telling you this. We'll go over it a little more next week when we start Dorian. We'll talk about it. Okay. Even though we're playing the same 7 notes, I'm not playing any notes different than from the Ionian. I'm just starting on a different note in the pattern, and I'm making that different note the root note. And from that point, so this will be 1, 2. This is I'm sorry. Shoot, I'm losing my mind. All right, here we go. We got 1, 2. Then this will be a flat third from the root note. You comparing the distance between the root note and each of the other 6 notes that you go up. There's 7 notes total. Okay, so the root to the second is a major second. Root to the third is a minor third. Root to the fourth is a perfect fourth. Root to the fifth is a perfect fifth interval. Root to the sixth is a major sixth interval. Root to the 7. I'm losing it. Here we go, folks. Root. There we go. Minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth. Okay. There's your major 6. Okay. And there's your flat 7. You know what? I'm losing my mind here. There we go. Yeah, because the Dorian has a flat 7. So 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and then the root. Even though it's the same notes, it totally has a different characteristic. We'll try some solos and ideas and little licks with that next week. I'll demonstrate. And we'll find a Dorian rhythm to play over. In my sheets I give you for next week, we'll have a chord change for it too. So I might be kind of going a little more advanced than some folks would want, but just if you get it, cool. If you don't worry about it. But sometimes some of these terms I'm using and information will just plant seeds that you might be, hey, I'm going to follow up on that. It might pique a little interest with you. So Dave's saying, well, let me back up here for a sec. Russ saying, do you play more with 3 notes per string versus major scale and actual playing? Russ, actually do both. You know, if I'm doing kind of more bluesier stuff and pentatonic-y stuff, I would do the cage pattern shapes, like the first diagram, for instance. But if I'm going to kind of rip into a little faster stuff, then the 3 notes per string comes in handy for that. The 3 note per string works real good for tapping, for playing a lot of faster licks, but you can also do nice stuff with it too. That's not shreddy and not crazy. I do actually do both. And Russ, the truth is, don't want to scare anyone, but you kind of want to know both. So I know all 5 cage patterns in C major. In fact, I know all 5 cage patterns in every key, but we're just talking about C major today. I know all 5 of those, and I know all 7 of the modes that are derived from the C major scale, and I can play them all over the fretboard. So we should probably know both, Russ. It's not one that's going to work for everything you do. So hopefully that answered that. Dave's saying chomping at the bit to learn which notes are sharp and flat and finally understand it, hopefully. Well, Dave, once we start doing the Dorian mode next week, then we're going to start comparing it to the major scale and see, well, what makes the Dorian different from the Ionian? And then what makes the Phrygian different from the Ionian? Then we're going to start to see how it all works together and what makes it sound the way it does. Dave's also saying if you populate the entire fretboard with C Ionian and then shift to the Dorian mode, do the notes on the entire fretboard shift, or do you use precise? That's Dave. Great question. It's the same exact notes. So if I'm playing in D Dorian, I'm going to play exactly these notes right here, but I'm not thinking of C as the root note. I'm thinking of D as the root note. That's going to make a big difference in how your phrases sound and how they sound over the backing track. Yep. So that's that. Okay. The second way to compare or think about the modes is not, they're an inversion of the major scale. So if I started on the third note and played, which is E in the major C major scale, make E the root note. See, that sounds even darker than the Dorian one. See, we're going to get into that. But let's think about this too. Instead of thinking of them as inversions of the major scale, we really need to know how each mode is and the characteristics that make each one unique, Dave, and everybody else. And then let's play them all against C as the root note. So we can hear C Ionian, then C Dorian. Yeah, that sounds a little darker. And then C Phrygian. That sounds more dark, even darker. Then C Lydian. See, the Lydian sounds major, but kind of a little different because it has a sharp 4. Then C Mixolydian has a flat 7. See, that's, if we compare them all to C, like do all the 7 modes with C as the root note, then you can really see and hear how it sounds different compared to each one. Okay, having said that, everybody, that's what we're going to look at today. So let me jump ship on this page 1. Let's turn that over, put that up on the desk. The other page I gave you is written in tablature, and I'm going to show you a neat way to practice the modes on one string. All right, so we've got the details for how to play them in the cage patterns or 3 notes per string. How about on one string? And this is kind of neat because it gets a very sitar type of sound, kind of Indian music. I'm going to change my tone too a little bit. Let me slightly clean it up. Just a pinch. I'm going to put a little more clean sound on it. Okay. The other way we want to think about the modes is in terms of whole steps and half steps. So this will help you too to understand the difference between them. So a major scale, let's take a look at example 1 up top here, or the first example. I didn't put example 1, 2, 3, and 4, but it's essentially 4 different exercises. Okay, the very first one, and I changed the key here. We're doing now B Ionian, not C Ionian. The reason is because I'm going to have us do the entire scale on the high E string, one string. You could even just use one finger on this, but it's about listening to the sound of the notes. And we're playing music, everybody. So there's more to music than just watching your fingers play the scales on the fretboard. We need to listen, because when we play music, we can't grab it and touch it. We can only hear it. So it would behoove us to listen really close to what we're playing and observe like how certain notes sound against the root note or the key we're in. So, and this will also help you get that kind of Indian sitar sound. That's why I chose to lower everything a half step to the key of B, because we're going to use the open B string, the second string, as a drone while we play the B major scale on the first string using one finger. Remember, the major scale sounds like do, re, mi. So on the first string, listen. And then back down. The frets are written right there for you. If you just read the tablature on the first string for the top line, you could do that. And if you throw in the open B string, you can hear how it rings against the notes I'm playing. Obviously, you're going to need electric guitar to do this, to reach up that high. Okay, you can really hear the sound of it by playing it on one string with the open B string ringing. Okay, now check this out. The interval structure for a major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. All this talk I'm doing right now, folks, is in Guitar Tricks. We got lessons on this too. And a whole step is equal to 2 frets on the guitar. A half step is equal to 1 fret on the guitar. If we're playing a note on the first string, 7th fret, for instance, and the next thing, a note is a whole step higher, on the same string, I would move up 2 frets. That would be that's a whole step. A half step is just 1 fret up on the same string. It also works going backwards. If you move back a whole step, we've moved back 2 frets. If we move back a half step, that's back 1 fret. Okay, the 1 fret distances tend to sound a little darker, and then the whole step sound a little brighter. Hear the difference? Just listening, okay? So we want to memorize the formula. I've wrote the W's and H's over the top of what we're doing right there, okay? Use whole steps and half steps to understand. Oh, you know what? I have a little typo there. I meant to write use whole. Oh, no typo. My bad. I was reading it wrong. Yeah, use whole steps, the W, and half steps, the H, to understand the interval distances or structure between the notes. That's a big part of it, folks, too. If you want to understand how the modes sound, knowing how they're built and constructed, going beyond just playing the scale pattern, but seeing and listening to how it's built. So if you just play and you memorize, oh, I got to go a whole step, you don't have to look at the tablature. And we want to try not to look at the tablature, but just build your scale based on what you know about the structure. So it'd be a whole step, going up to the 7th to the 9th fret, another whole step to the 11th fret, half step to the 12th, whole step to the 14, whole step to the 16, whole step to the 18, and then a half step to the 19. That's the top line. Now going backwards, folk, that's the next example. The next line down is the B Ionian descending. So you're going to go from the root at the 19th fret, back a half step to the 18th fret, back a whole step to the 16, back another whole step to 14, then back another whole step to 12, half step to 11, whole step to 9, and then a whole step to 7. There you go. Now, what do you do with that? Okay, we're going to make up some ideas. I got a little exercise in the next 2 examples to do with that. Okay, so let's try this. I'm sure most of us are familiar with doing your scales in sequences of 3s. We're going to do that with this on 1 string. It's not about speed. It's not about playing fast. It's about just getting familiar with the sound of it and getting your fingers to have functional movement through the scale or on the 1 string. Okay, David's saying, so when you improvise, your juicy chord tones shift with the modes using the same notes. Yep, exactly, Dave. Yep. So what we're going to do 2 things. And each time we go to a new mode, we're going to learn the new mode as against the C as the root note. But I'm also going to talk to you about what the parent major scale that it's derived from is. So we're going to cover both ends of the ways you can view the mode. So some of us might understand it better one way. Some might understand a little better the other way. Okay. But let's do, yeah, you're on the right track, Dave. And then King 50 saying, reminds me of If I Need Someone by the Beatles. Yeah, it could. Yep. Even George Harrison was into sitar for a while. And you're right. Some of their songs tend to have that sound. Doesn't If I Fell in Love, I think that's the Beatles song that has, it sounds a little bit like a sitar in the solo, I believe, or part of the song. I did that with a student a long time ago. But yeah, good point, King 50. Yep. So check this out. What we're going to do, if you've done your scales and sequences of threes, like your pentatonic scale going up in threes, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like that. And then backwards. Okay. Or if we do, you can apply threes to the scales we did last week and today, earlier, the 3 notes per strings or the cage pattern going. And then back down. Okay, we're going to do that with one string. So it's not about playing fast, like I said. It's about just getting it down. And you could use, I didn't put fingers here, folks. You could literally just use one finger. It's not about playing something fast. It's about listening and getting the sound. So the first 3 notes are going fret 7, 9, 11. What I like to do is play the first one with my first finger, the next one with my third, and then the third note I'll shift up with my same third finger. Okay, so and just do all downstrokes on this. Then the next set of 3 is going to go 9, 11, 12. Then shift my third finger up 1 fret. Okay, the next one's going to go 11, 12, shift up to 14. The next one's going to go 12, 14, shift to 16. 14, 16, shift to 18. And then the last one, we just go to the 19. Okay, or you could even go 16, 18, shift to 19, and then pick 19. So all together, what I have written sounds like this. Okay, that's what the tablature says. You could always squeeze out another 3 at the end. And just play the 19 twice. Yep. Okay, that's that one. And then going down, we're just going to do the same thing in reverse. So maybe you could start with your third finger, then go to your second and first. 19, 18, 16. Then we're going to go 18, 16, 14. 16, 14, 12. And what I'm doing is using my third finger first and then shifting down on the first. So I'm going then 18 with the third finger, 16 with the first, 14 with the first. Next one is 16, 14, 12. Next one is 14, 12, 11. 12, 11, 9. And then I end it on the 7. Or you could squeeze out another 3 and go from 12, 11, 10, or 12, 11, 9. Do one more, 11, 9, 7. And then I like to always end on a strong beat, which is a downbeat. So if you're going to do the last one, make sure you hit that last 7 twice. All right, so going down. Going up. Down. Okay. So it's pretty simple stuff, but you can really hear the major sound out of it. Now check this out. I'm not going to give you tabs for this today, but just taking a little peek behind the curtain at a different mode. See if you hear that droning root note. We're doing B. Oh, and by the way, too, if you're a little confused by my key change here, what you can do is if you want to hear the B Ionian done with these patterns, just move each one back 1 fret, because now the root note won't be on C, it'll be on B on the 7th fret. Take this pattern, instead of starting on the 8th fret and going 8, 10, 12, move it back a fret and you start on the 7th fret and go 7, 9, 11 and play the same pattern, just 1 fret lower. So if I do the cage pattern starting on the 7th fret as the root, and play your bar chord on the 7th fret, it sounds like this. Same notes, but obviously on the higher string, we're playing the same notes another octave up. So what's neat about this, folks, is you could actually play the pattern 1, the cage pattern we did last week, starting on the 7th fret, go like this. And once you get to that note, now play the rest of it on the first string, which we got written as the top example on page 2. And then what you've done is you've just played 3-octave B major scale or a 3-octave B Ionian scale. Okay, that's pretty cool. We're getting like piano players, a little bit of a range on our instrument. Okay, so now how about this? Let's try, it's not on the page, it's not in tablature, but let's try to make a little lick that you can play so it doesn't sound like an exercise, all right? Okay, watch this. If we play 7 on the first string with your middle finger, and then the 6th fret, you're going to hammer on that 7, pull off, and then slide to the 7. So the lick goes 7, pick 7, pick 6, then hammer on, pull off, and then slide back to the 7. And we're going to play the B string with it. See that sound? This will sound a little more like a sitar than that exercise we just did. Now you're going to do the same idea with the next 2 notes, 9 and 7. Pick a 9, then 7, pick it, hammer on the 9, pull off the 7, then slide the 7 to 9. Put the B string in with it. Then we're going to do it with the 11 and 9th fret. 12 and 11. 14. 16. 18. And then 19. Oops. Okay. And you can skip around too. I was just playing them in order. You can slide up to other notes in the pattern. Just experiment, have fun with it, play around. That's what I was doing with this is once I realized what I was going to be showing everybody tonight, I started screwing around with ideas. Okay, how about going down? You could do this. You're going to go 19 on the first string, then 18 with the first finger, hammer on to 19, pull off to 18. Then we're going to slide it down to 16. So we're going to go like this. And the nice thing is to keep that B string ringing if you can. Try not to let the tip of your fingers, try not to let them touch the 2nd string. Then we'll do it on the 18. Then pick 16, hammer at 18, pull off to 16, slide to 14. See, I'm touching the 2nd string. It was stopping it. Okay, get some neat ideas. You just experiment. How about sliding maybe every other note, like go from the 7 to the 11, then 9 to 12, then 11 to 14. That's kind of crazy, right? Some of us like Steve Vai's type of music. He does things like this too. Sometimes he'll limit himself to playing just on one string. Now, this confounds some of my students when I have them do this, because there's a misconception that you need to know your entire fretboard and you need to know all your scales to play really good. Well, that helps. But sometimes what's really cool, folks, is to limit yourself to just playing one of the blues boxes, and you can only stay in that blues box for your whole solo. Hey, B.B. King does it. Albert King does it. And they sound great, right? You don't have to go all over the fretboard to sound good. Same with this. Steve Vai would often do things where he limit himself. Like, I'm only going to play on one string. And how can I make that sound good against the backing track? All right. So you got to think about your scales in a different context. Instead of these geometric shapes that cross the fretboard up and down, we're thinking about a shape on one string. This is how piano players think when they play piano. I don't play piano at all, but I know what it looks like. And I'm sure everyone here knows what it looks like. Low notes are on the left and they get higher as you go. It's like one big long guitar string with like a ton of octaves. I think they got like 6, 7 octaves or more on a big size piano. Well, on guitar, we don't have that range. We've got basically 6 little pianos, and each string is about almost 2 octaves. When you think about it, if we have 24 frets, then each string is 2 octaves. But each string also overlaps. Like, you know that on your 6th string, frets 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are the exact same notes as the open 5th string. Open to 5th fret. All right. So even though we've got 2 octaves on each string, or almost 2 octaves, it's not 2 octaves times 6, because every string contains notes, at least 5 notes that are on the next string, if not more. Okay. So there's a lot of overlappage. Now, just think about playing on one string. Like, let me put on the track for a sec. Actually, a different track. Let me just put this real quick here. Bingo. Shut that down. Oops, wrong one, folks. Here we go. Let's see if it'll come up. Okay. I'm going to give a little slightly back to that rock and roll tone on this for a sec. I'm going to go back to my Blues Junior. Just a little bit of crunch on there. And then this is a B Ionian track, all right? It's going from B to G sharp minor, E major, and then back to B. 3, 4. One string. Hi. Sorry about that. All right, stop that. So you get the idea. Just experiment over it. Some of it sounds good. Some of it might not sound good to your ears. I hit a really bogus note there that wasn't in the scale. I'm sure everyone could hear that. But it does. Russ, oh, man, yeah. It sounds like someone playing a bagpipe. That's a great analogy, Russ. Awesome, thanks. Yeah, because on bagpipes, it's like they're squeezing the bag and it's blowing air. It's blowing one note that's a constant pitch while they're also fingering other melodies over it. Right on, Russ. Yes, this is like bagpipes. Good call. Thank you, Russ. All right, I'm making a note of that because when we do the modes, I'm going to be presenting them in the same way we did here today, everybody. We're going to spend the first week, next week, working on Dorian, the second mode, with the finger patterns for that, the cage shape for it, the 3 notes per string version, the chord that goes with it, okay? And then the week after that, we're going to work on it on one string like this, okay? So I'm not going too deep into in terms of what I have you people do, but get familiar with the wholes and half steps and then try to see that visual connection when you're going up. Whole step from the first note to the second is a whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Backwards, because you also should know it backwards because when we play guitar, we're not just going up, we're also going back down. So back down, it would just be reading it in reverse. Or if you look at my second diagram, it shows you it's half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. Okay, it's 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half. Going down, so the highest note back would be half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half, whole, whole. Yeah, very cool on the analogy there of the bagpipes, Russ. Right on. And the drones, David. Yeah, I mean, how many heavy metal players are doing like where they're pedaling on the E string? Right? You got that. Okay, anytime you hear that stuff, or pedaling on like Van Halen on Panama, he's pedaling on the E note while he's changing his triads up on top. Okay, those pedal tones are cool. Drones, droning notes. Yeah, yeah. All right, Russ, cool. David, right on. I'm going to wrap it up, folks. Next Wednesday, we'll start Dorian. And try to get some of this under your fingers because we're always going to come back to comparing the new mode we're doing to the Ionian. And that way you'll really start getting an understanding about what makes Dorian Dorian. What's the difference there? We're going to learn what it is in terms of flat thirds and flat sevens and whatnot. We're also going to learn in the whole step, half step, whole step way. Okay. And I'm also going to play a few demonstrations for you too. So we're not here to learn a bunch of licks in the style. This is for beginners. We need to just learn the patterns and get a good understanding of it. And we need to know the whole step, half steps of them and learn what they sound like. Okay. Because we're musicians. We really need to pay attention to what we play and go for accuracy. Okay. So knocking it out here, David, Russ, cool. Ryan, appreciate it, Ryan. Yep. Oh, and Zoom tomorrow night. Yep. Well, actually, tomorrow night, no Zoom tomorrow night. I'm done with that, Danny. It should be on Friday night if you're in that class. I'm doing the boot camp again. We're only doing 4 weeks in the boot camp on guitar tricks. So last Thursday was the 4th week in my Thursday night boot camp, but I've also got a Friday night. So maybe you're in that one, Danny. And Friday night one, I'm on week 3 in 2 days, this coming Friday. Terry, cool. You're welcome. All right. Richard, right on. Appreciate it. David, you're welcome. Yep. Zane, cool. Cool. All right. Chris, you're welcome. Right on. Roland, good. And Roland, we'll see you soon too. And next week, I think. All right. Cool. Alonzo, right on. Cryo, cool. Danny's good to see Friday. My bad. Danny, exactly. We'll catch you there, bud. Danny. Yeah, good to see some new names here. A couple names I have never seen before. So awesome. Everyone be good. Peace. Keep practicing, man. And ladies and gentlemen, keep practicing and keep them fingers flying. We'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.